Okay, welcome to Fresh Set of Downs. My name is Bruce Badgley, and with us tonight, got a couple of really good friends of mine, and a guy that we hope can be a friend as well. There, head coach of LaSalle, Brett Gordon. Brett, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Bruce. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show today.
Well, I tell you what, and obviously Bob Long, um, good friend of mine, but also a good friend of LaSalle as well. Bob does, the broadcasting there for your team, and both of you guys are, kind of legacies at LaSalle. Bob, you graduated from there. Brett, I mean, your dad coached there now, and you've been involved in the program for a while, and now your head coach. I mean, how does that feel?
It's pretty exciting. I mean, I have to kind of remind myself, turning back the clock just 7, 8 months ago, how much has transpired over that amount of time and how much work that our staff and the players have put in to get us in a position to, start the season over the past couple of weeks. So, been a lot of hard work, but also a lot of fun at the same time.
Yeah, Bob, you got a question?
Sure, Brett, and good to see you. Congrats on a great start. You talked about the last 7 to 8 months since you've taken the job and the whirlwind that has occurred. What was the one or two things, Brett, that you thought, hey, there's a good base here, tradition, rich program. How were you looking to put your mark on the program, and how do you feel you've done in the last 7 to 8 months?
Yeah, I think overall, one of the big focal points that we have just talked about nonstop is really just making sure that we do the best we can as a staff and as a group of players to play to our potential. Potential is something that a lot of programs in certain areas have. We wanted to make sure that potential wasn't something that we used to describe our team anymore, and we felt that our group as coaches and then as players was to make sure that we get ourselves playing to the highest level of our capability. So everything that we focused on starting in the off season back in January, we wanted the opportunity to have the best possible weight room program that we could. We revamped a lot of things in that area, which I think has served us very well here over the last couple of weeks. And then really just getting to know the players and getting to understand their personalities, what their skill sets are, and then making sure that that we as the staff, our job is to make sure we put all the pieces of the puzzle together. So that part's been fun, moving some guys around and making sure that our schemes match what our skill sets are. And that process is still ongoing, as we speak today.
Yeah, and obviously you talked about, the last few months. I mean, you had kind of some insight, obviously, on the fact that, your dad was the coach there and what have you. Is there anything that has maybe surprised you about, once you became the head coach there at LaSalle that you really didn't, that kind of threw you for a loop, maybe?
I wouldn't say anything that threw me for a loop. I tried to go in with eyes wide open and not making really too many assumptions. And really, the work I wanted to get at the fastest was getting to know the players. At the end of the day, coaching to me is all about connecting with young people. It's what attracted me to have the amount of years that I served in various assistant roles. I really do enjoy working with the kids. And really, I've been very pleasantly surprised, not shocked, that we just have a lot of really good kids from really good families who just wanted an opportunity to be a part of something special when it comes to their high school football experience. So I take that I take that very seriously, and making sure that all the players currently in the program and then the ones that are going to be coming through, really do get to experience the full experience, if you will, of what LaSalle offers, not just from a school community standpoint, but what the tradition of that program has represented for so many people beforehand, and some of what we've gotten away from recently. So I think we're off to a good start from that standpoint. I think The excitement's at an all-time high at the moment. We certainly had two pretty good wins out of the gate, which helps. But we got to make sure that we're continuing to ascend and making sure that as the season goes on, that we're improving week to week. And that's really what we've been talking about nonstop.
Go ahead, Bob.
The schedule, Brett, and we've talked about it certainly before the season started. Now we're two games in, and what you guys have done is very impressive. I don't know that there's many, if any, teams that have a schedule similar to what you guys have put in front of yourselves the first 2 weeks of the season. Maybe fellow Christian Brothers school, Pittsburgh Central Catholic out in Pittsburgh might have a similar type of schedule. But in terms of challenging yourself in that way, how early, first off, did you decide to schedule Harrisburg? I know Malvern's been on the schedule year over year, but by the time you were making that schedule, how much did you know about your guys? And did you feel you'd be ready for those contests when you had to actually put the pen to paper and put the schedule in early?
Yeah, so the schedule was set before I arrived. So, when I got hired in early January and got in, certainly wanted to get a look at the schedule pretty quick. It was all pretty much set as far as who we were going to play in 2024. So I think in hindsight, having looked back and now just 2 weeks in, I think it got our players and certainly our staff's attention right out of the gate. And we knew that, we had to maximize our offseason opportunity, not only to get to know and learn all the players, but get our new offensive system, our new defensive system, our special teams intact as much as possible, as quickly as possible, so that, we knew that we had to be prepared right out of the gate. And I actually think the way the schedule shook out with, starting with a team like Harrisburg, who's a perennial state power in 6A, it forced us and the players as well to make sure that, we understood that we had to be locked in and ready to go right out of the gate. And then right after that, we went into Malvern last week, who, Malvern historically is just an incredibly solid, tough, well-coached football team that every year, is going to be a tough contest. And then from what I've seen so far with what we have this coming week down at Calvert Hall, it's our third road trip in a row. It's going to be our third 2-hour bus trip down to Towson. It's an early kickoff at 12 o'clock on Saturday. And after the first 2 weeks, all the discussion we've had as a staff and as a team is making sure that we keep our edge going down there this week. And the kids have responded so, really good so far this week. But as you look from start to finish, and, we certainly never look ahead of any opponent, we know we have a overall very tough schedule as you break it out over the course of the season, which at the end of the day, as the head coach, I view as a positive thing. It'll give us a lot of opportunities to get tested early and have us prepared for the bulk of the season as we get into October.
And with that, you talk about the fact that, you've got a full body of work. You've got a complete schedule here. Obviously you've got these preseason games to prepare you for, a Philadelphia Catholic League, schedule and what have you. So talk a little bit about, how you kind of plan that, going through a preseason, what you're doing. And then once you get into league play, do you change anything, or do you, install certain things that you just want to show to your, Philadelphia Catholic League opponents?
Yeah, so we really do take it week to week, and as we go into each week as a unique game plan on both sides of the ball. I've never been one to have the mindset of let's reserve certain things or let's not show certain things. I think, we practice, a repertoire of everything that we have on both sides of the ball every week. Sometimes depending on your opponent, defensively, for example, they could be an even front versus an odd front, which might change our approach in either pass protections or the run game. So I wouldn't say we necessarily focus too much on, specifically getting geared up. The one thing we've talked about over the last 2 weeks is making sure that, now that we're into week 3, that we really make sure we're developing depth at as many positions as possible. It's a long season, and when you're looking at who we've played and some of the physical nature of some of the games, even so far, guys get banged up. We're already seeing it in a handful of spots across the roster. So we're really focused on making sure that the depth at certain positions where in certain cases, our backup players are making sure we get a ton of reps for those guys so that, if and when called upon, that they've had plenty of live fire and practice to be ready to step out there. So I wouldn't say it's so much week to week game planning. From that perspective, it's more of just making sure that as the season goes on, we're getting as many players ready to play as possible.
Wow.
Brett, what Bruce and Dave do really well, with this show is certainly to have coaches like yourself on and celebrate the successes of the programs, but they also do a great job of giving coaches an opportunity to highlight specific players. And certainly this might be the toughest question because there are so many contributors on your team that have had a huge impact on the last 2 weeks. But is there anybody or a couple of players that you think have particularly stepped up, whether that's from physicality, leadership, overall performance?
Yeah, I would say overall, if we just start, I'll start on the kind of the defensive side of the ball. Our linebacking core, is led by 3 seniors, Dylan Clare, Jack Luthi, and Chris Filippo, who are all, captains down in Ocean City this week. They really set the tone for us on defense, and very proud of the 3 of them, not just the 3 of them, but the defensive group as a whole. But they really kind of set the tone defensively. And then if you go to kind of the offensive side of the ball, our offensive line has done a really good job the first couple of weeks in pass protection. We still have to work through some challenges we have in the run game. And part of that, I think, is due to a couple of the front fours that we've seen over the last 2 weeks. Certainly hasn't been easy by any stretch. And then our skill players on offense, that get a lot of the attention, but at the same time, it's very well deserved. Between Gavin Sidward, Joey O'Brien, Jules McFadden, JP Oates is a name you're going to hear more and more of. And then we feel good about both running backs, between Desmond Ortiz and newcomer Josh Simmons. So I think overall, I like where we're at. I think we have a nice blend of some experience and some younger guys that are filling in some really key roles. And the expectation is, those younger players continue to get reps and continue to get better. And but at the same time, especially in high school, it's very important to have a solid senior class. And between, Jack and Dylan and Chris, and, I should have probably mentioned Justin Hawkins as well on defense. These are all guys that have played a lot of snaps for us and guys that we're counting on to lead the way as the season goes on.
Let's talk a little bit about chemistry. You as a new head coach coming in, and you talked about wanting to learn the players. And a lot about teams are just players learning about other players, So in your eyes, where do you guys stand as far as chemistry goes, team chemistry? And, overall, how long do you think that it really does take for a team to form its identity for any given season?
Yeah, it's a great question because I've never been around any successful football teams and programs that didn't have really good chemistry. And that was one of the things I was a little bit concerned about coming in, just from things that I had kind of witnessed and heard previously. And, the way my approach to that, as far as being the leader of that group, is making sure that expectations are crystal clear. And I think the way you help establish culture within a program is making sure that the same set of standards is across the board for everybody in the program, regardless of position or what grade they're in. And I'm just a big believer that if you're consistent with those messages across the board, and everybody knows that everyone is going to be held accountable, regardless if it's the starting quarterback all the way down to the, third string holder on special teams, that we are all in this together. We're all going to be held to a certain standard. There will be no exceptions to any of that. And that at the end of the day, we're only as good as our weakest link. That was the message we got out quickly. And that was where I was most proud of the kids, that, it was very apparent very quickly that all the structure and discipline and accountability focus that we brought with us back in January, they got on board very quickly. And I think that also helped accelerate the team bonding that we've seen. It is a really good group of kids overall that care. I will say that about this team. This team cares, and this team really wants to win. And if you have a group like that, I view it as our job as coaches is to ideally show them the way and then get out of their way and let the players lead the team. And that's something we talk a lot about, and something that we're still, trending towards getting exactly where we want it.
Bob, you got a final question there for Brett?
You're going to make me ask it, I guess, Bruce, huh? So this is an Eastern PA football show. And Brett, there's been a lot of talk about your guys in the last 2 weeks and kind of taking the state by storm. Maybe I won't ask about the team, because I think when you think about Catholic League Red Division, Roman Catholic and St. Joe's Prep, and then 6A with Imhotep coming up to District 12. And, I know you're going to say you take it week by week, but certainly, eyes wide open to what this team is doing. How do you guys feel in terms of being able to compete at the highest level of the district in the Catholic League?
Yeah, I would say, we really are focused on the day-to-day progress of things, and what I've explained to the team and what our staff, has shared. And I think the players are buying in that, we want to make sure that we're playing our best football as the season goes on. And with the hard work that the kids have put in and the coaches getting us to this point, and assuming we continue to improve each and every day, make sure that we're the best versions of ourselves every day at practice and then every week, we feel like when push comes to shove at the end of the season, that we'll have an opportunity to really earn the right, to win those games that we know we have to win at the end of the season. But we do talk a lot about, it doesn't just happen. You have to earn your way there. And this team in recent memory, has kind of fallen short on that. And we do talk a lot about that, but it has to come from your preparation, your work ethic, your due diligence. And I think the kids have really bought into that mantra. And then our belief is, assuming we continue to do that, we will at least have earned the opportunity to compete with the best, not only in the city, but in Eastern PA and the entire state, to hopefully have a say at the end of the season.
Well, I tell you what, Brett, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, meeting you, and I'm hoping to get down to do a game here with Bob so that I can, get a little bit more idea of, obviously I watch the games and what have you, but there's nothing like being there to really understand what a football team's all about. So fingers crossed I get down there and see you guys play. Listen, thank you very much for taking some time out of a very busy schedule to talk with us here on Fresh Set of Downs.
No, I appreciate it, Bruce. You're welcome to join the program, and Bob, anytime, and hopefully get a chance to meet you one of these days. But thanks for having me.
All right, just go ahead and exit out, and Bob and I'll carry on, and we'll bring in our buddy Dave Mika here, who
Good
finally
seeing you, Brett.
got his stuff together. And
so hey, I can't believe you made me, the voice of LaSalle football, ask that question, Bruce. I can't believe
I know. Well, look, sometimes it comes down to the fact that and there he is, Dave Mika. Look at
hello.
there. You finally figured it out, huh?
Yeah, I had to kind of download everything again.
There you go. See, and you use your entry to duck my question, Dave. How about that?
Yeah.
And what was your question?
Well,
go ahead, Bruce. You tell.
Bob and I did had a little conversation before, and we wanted to just really, ask Brett, made sure that we asked Brett, how he felt that LaSalle, was stacking up, in relationship to, the entire state, or even just District 12 and 6A, how that kind of stacks up, to the rest of the state there. And
I'm intrigued as to Dave's thought on that too, because in my mind, we have the most stacked PCL Red Division in a long time. We have
Mhm.
LaSalle playing at a very, very high level, and St. Joe's Prep is St. Joe's Prep. Roman Catholic is as good, as they have been in a very, very long time. Of course, Roman Catholic, a 5A team, but the Catholic
Mhm.
League Red Division only plays, regardless of classification, right? So those three teams will compete for a title. Then they'll stratify and go to 6A. LaSalle will play St. Joe's Prep in a District 12 quarterfinal or semifinal, beg your pardon. And then the winner of those teams will most likely play Imhotep. So you think about
Yes.
like all those four teams in that small little quadrant of the state, it's as good as it gets.
Well, yeah, and with Emotep now moving up to 6A, to me, I mean, you take Emotep, LaSalle, St. Joe's Prep. You tell me another place in the state that has three teams as good as those three. And Roman Catholic, hey, with Emotep moving up to 6A, I think a lot of people think the door has opened for them to make that trip to Cumberland Valley maybe this year.
Yeah, yeah, really interesting there. But always a good discussion surrounding, District 12 and the rest of the state. And the funny thing is how it just kind of, depending on classification and year, how it just kind of, migrates around. But in the case of 6A, it just always seems to, migrate back to, District 12 and, who is going to be the team coming out. And it has changed a lot with, I think the dynamic is completely changed now with Imhotep moving up to 6A. Bob, what do you think?
Yes, that's the game, right? I mean, LaSalle and St. Joe's Prep will duke it out on one of those first two weekends in November. And then you can basically say the 15th or 16th of November, that District 12 championship game, which again, for those outside of the District 12 sphere, is going to be the public league champ at that classification against the Catholic League champ at that classification. In the recent past, there has not been a public league 6A team that's been
Mm-mm.
anywhere near the quality of St. Joe's Prep or whomever came out of that Catholic League. Imhotep was 5A, and really only until a year or two ago, there wasn't a Catholic League 5A team that would stand up to Imhotep. Of course, Roman Catholic had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter of the District 12 title game last year. Imhotep came back and scored 2 touchdowns to win, and that was by far their most competitive game on the route to a state championship last year. So now you move up Imhotep. Imhotep's always going to be a 6A, wagon, if you will. And then St. Joe's Prep and LaSalle. Certainly, St. Joe's Prep has had the better of that rivalry the last 10 years, the better of anybody in the state the last 10
Mhm.
years. That's going to be must-see TV or in-person viewing for the next decade plus.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
mean, one of those teams is going to have to beat the other two. So it's not an easy road just to get out of that district.
Mm-hmm.
Um, any one of those three could move on. So obviously, a lot of people will say it's St. Joe's Prep until they get beat, but it's not going to be easy road for them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. I mean, I think that the competitive balance now in 6A in District 12 is in my mind the burning question or the burning thing to watch
It's
in
a
all of
story
Eastern
in
PA
PA over the
football.
first 2 weeks, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, clearly, absolutely. So, all right, Bob, are you going to hang with us a while, or you have to
For a
depart?
little bit.
All
So
right,
the
good.
reason, just so you know, the reason I took my camera off is because my little guy crawled in, opened the door, and
I
I had
saw
to get him
that.
out the door. So yeah. But let's keep going. Let's
All
keep
right, we'll
going
keep
until I'm
going
called
here.
out.
All right. Well, we'll just start talking about our games and everything else here. So we want to thank everybody for joining us here on EasternPAFootball.com's Fresh Set of Downs. our buddy Bob Long joining us, with Dave Mika. And Dave and I will be here every week. Bob, because of family and travel and whatnot, will be with us periodically. But Bob will also be providing weekly your rankings. We're going to break
All
out,
right.
the rankings next week, guys, of 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, three groups. We'll have our top five. So, that's going to be very interesting. We'll have at least 3 weeks under our belt, and we will break those out next week for all the fans. So, let's take a look at some of the games from week one. Obviously, Bob, you were at LaSalle and Malvern. Why don't you give us a little synopsis of, that game and the nuances that
Yeah.
went.
I know that there's a big game third on that list, Harrisburg McDevitt, but I watched the Harrisburg McDevitt, the broadcast, and certainly I broadcast the LaSalle Malvern prep game. That was one of the better games I've ever seen. And I hate hyperbole. I really do. That was one of the better high school football games that I have ever seen. Malvern prep with 3 Power 5 defensive linemen in a front four, uh, 3 returning linebackers, and mostly a 4-4 set. And LaSalle with all that talent offensively, a Syracuse commit wide receiver, a junior athlete that has offers from Alabama and everybody else, a quarterback, committed already to Rutgers as a junior, and a couple of offensive linemen that are new to the position that will be in that discussion of playing high major football. 2 really talented running backs as well. I mean, the defense that we talked about, right? The LaSalle's linebackers going to West Virginia next year. It was a talent-rich game, a sold-out contest next to the ocean in Ocean City, shore homes in the background, just a picturesque environment. It's the 4th year they've done it down there, and it is the event of the weekend at the Jersey Shore. And when the game lives up to the hype, which it's done 3 out of the 4 years, you really can't ask for anything better. And it was as fun a game as I've done in a very long time.
Wow, that's fantastic. And as you talked about, when a game lives up to the hype, then you just kind of get I always get kind of a feeling in my heart, where it just the anticipation, and then all the play that takes place. It's just one that leaves a lasting memory. But Dave, I know that we talked a little bit before, but Notre Dame, Green Pond, and what they're doing. I mean, they're averaging 63.5 points a game through the first 2 games.
Yeah. I mean, they're leading the state in that category, and it's led by their quarterback, Matt Bondar. Here's a guy that his first varsity start threw for 604 yards. This kid's thrown for 917 yards in just 2 games. So
Wow.
Phil has his offense clicking at a high level, and watch out for Notre Dame. Their offense is going to be a tough one to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And this Harrisburg McDevitt game, it was only 6-3 at half, and then it just
Yeah,
kind of blew open in the second half. Um, a lot of talent on display. I think it had been 5 years since they had played, or maybe longer, since Harrisburg and McDevitt had kind of, locked it up there. Um, just I think it was great for football, not only in the center of the state, but I think it was great for football in Pennsylvania that these 2 teams got together. Now it's really a product of the fact that McDevitt now is in the Commonwealth Conference, the same conference as Harrisburg. I mean,
hmm
this was a league game, and now they'll play every year, and a realignment of the Commonwealth Division there to where there's 9 league games. It's I think it's going to transform, quite honestly, District 3 ultimately, in that you're going to get a lot more of these kind of super conferences. But still a great game with a lot of big plays. Um, and I think it was just good for football. What do you think, Bob?
I thought it was terrific for District 3 and certainly the Harrisburg community. I know that there are not always warm feelings amongst those two fan bases, which is fine every now and again, as long as it's kind of within the bounds. Great game, obviously, right? And it's two teams that I think are really trying to find themselves. I don't think either team would tell you that that's the level that they think they're going to be playing at season end, right? I mean, McDevitt replaced a ton of talent, certainly at the wide receiver position, some linemen. You think back to 2 years ago and that brick wall that they had on the offensive line. Harrisburg certainly had to replace Sean Lee on a relatively short time frame. The first week of the season, they went back and forth at quarterback. They seem to have, at least for the time being, settled on Jayon Lewis, who settle's not the right word. He had a terrific contest, but he was not the guy that they expected to be their starting quarterback for the year. So Harrisburg, as they do from time to time, is finding themselves early. They gutted out a big win, which of course will reverberate through the mid-pen standings now. And yes, it's a huge contest. I believe by the end of the year, we get a much better Harrisburg and a much better Bishop McDevitt for any subsequent matchups or certainly postseason play.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big one, kind of over in your neck of the woods there, Dave, but one that
Mhm.
I actually had my eye on, and that's Tom Gravish and that Jersey Shore team. That's a 4A team going to a pretty tough 5A Del Val opponent, playing some really hard-nosed defense and coming away with a convincing victory, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a 14-10 win. It was a pretty close game, little back and forth throughout the game, but Jersey Shore showed why they have been a very good program the last 3 years, and they come away and beat good District 2 team Delaware Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one your way there too. And you and I were talking a little bit about this earlier, but Parkland, a team that really went down to I think the Final Four last year in 6A, and they got thumped by Freedom. I think that was also like Freedom's 300th win, I guess, as a program too. So monumental there. But talk a little bit about the reverberations of Freedom beating Parkland.
Yeah, talking to a lot of people in District 11 where I'm at, everyone was saying Freedom, Parkland, Nazareth, and there was a few people that had Freedom up top, and they have a lot coming back where Parkland and Nazareth graduated some key players, and like Nazareth graduated their whole line and a lot of seniors, as did Parkland. So hey, round one goes to Freedom, convincing win last week against a very good Parkland team.
Yeah, Bob. And, I think a team that kind of took it on the chin was, out of District 1 was Springford. I think people were expecting, Springford to do pretty well this year and lost big to Easton.
Yeah, and I'm going to rely on Dave in terms of Easton, but Springford had all the expectations in the world, particularly with the quarterback, Matt Zollers, who will be playing his football at the next level at Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And Penn State, by the way, Bruce, I know you are covering Penn State these days, was certainly in the mix for Zollers. Combination of NIL and perhaps a better pathway to the starting quarterback position won out for Matt Zollers. But nonetheless, I can't say that I've seen this team play a ton. Certainly, there's some talent on that team, but I mean, it's hard to argue with 49-7. Dave, tell
Yeah,
us
I
about
mean,
Easton.
yeah, that was an eye-opening win. I don't think many people going into that game was going to pick Easton over Springford. Not only pick them, but pick them to basically mercy rule them. The question is Easton back? This is arguably the coach's biggest win there. And, listen, no atmosphere is greater than a Friday night at Easton. It's unbelievable. If you've never gone there, go there.
The
It's just
band is
incredible.
incredible.
The band, the fans, the kids. I mean, it is this loud, it's fun, and it's very intimidating if you're not used to it. And Springford went up there, and I'll tell you what, Easton did it on both sides of the ball. Great defense. It kind of reminds you of the old Easton maybe 10 years ago where, this Easton team, I'll tell you what, they could play it on both sides of the ball.
Oh, that's
Dave,
good.
did I hear you say that? I just want to make sure. Is Easton football the best environment in Pennsylvania? By the way, Bruce, subject for a future show, top 5 or
Yeah.
top 10
Well,
environments.
I'll tell you what, I'll send you some clips of the fans, the kids. It is incredible. I mean, it's just in this area, there's no better team that has a better atmosphere Friday night than Easton.
Well, we're
Love
going to
it.
have to figure out how to work that into a contest or
Yeah.
something like that.
I think we
Let's
should
set
put it on
down.
social media
Yeah.
and let's hear it from the fans.
Mhm.
Who has the best atmosphere on a Friday night? I think that would be good to do a little poll and then let's
Yep.
talk about it. Maybe we
Yeah.
could bring in some people from some of these stadiums.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the best
Yeah.
part about doing this show is because of doing it via Zoom. We can bring people in from all over. And also, I mean, on the chat as well. I mean, people can live chat
Right.
this. I'd like to hear what other people are saying about, like, the big time experiences here,
Yeah,
in Pennsylvania. So we're going to have to keep this going throughout the year by
absolutely.
far. Definitely. And Southern Columbia got back on track against the Loyal Sock. Gosh, I hated to be loyal. If you're a Loyal Sock fan, you kind of hated to be playing Southern Columbia after that thumping that they took from Berks Catholic the week before. But obviously, Coach Roth, they were ready to play, and 47-0. I think they're getting back on track. I think it was very much an anomaly. And, the funny thing, when I always talk to Coach Wolfram at Why I'm Missing, he always talks about the fact that they have the single biggest home field advantage than, the vast majority of teams. And that is because they play on Saturday and nobody wants to play on Saturday. And, I think it was a little bit tough. Long bus ride on an early Saturday morning. Granted, it was the first week of the season, but they had a tough time against Weil, but not against Loyal Sock, Dave.
Yeah, and with the win, Jim Roth again makes history. 500 wins. Incredible, incredible, you know, job that Jim's done. Great win. They bounced back from a tough loss against Wyomissing. And, this is the first year in years. There's no Garcias on the team.
Wow.
So it'll be interesting to see. They had this run of all these Garcias, and they listen. Southern Columbia is still Southern Columbia until someone beats them in the playoffs. You have to think they're going to be at Cumberland Valley when it's all said and done.
Well, I remember
So here's
too.
a trivia question, by the way, on 500 wins. Any idea how many coaches prior to Jim in the country have won 500 games?
What do I want to say? He's the third one. Am I correct?
Fifth.
Fifth. Okay, so I was close.
In the history of high school football in
That's
the United
incredible.
States.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, and the nicest guy you would ever want to meet. I mean,
Yeah.
Gave me the time, has given me the time of day a couple times, and to talk football, and it's always very special. And it was the interview that I had with Jim following last year's championship was pretty special too, on because he was just taken back by the fact that they went down to score that winning touchdown as anybody. So it was very interesting. Um, and then we've got Twin Valley and Sealands Grove. Twin Valley, probably the team that I think nobody's heard of. People don't even know where Twin Valley is. It is down near Elverson, near Morgantown here, technically in Berks County, but that's a team people are going to know where they're from because, in my view, one of the top teams in the eastern half of the state, in 4A, and their coach is Brett Myers, who took Middletown to 3 consecutive 3A state championships. So a lot of pedigree there. His son is a 4-year starting quarterback. They've got great skill players. I saw them play the opening week against Berks Catholic, and boy, they are the real deal. That's the Sealands Grove team that now obviously a change and they lost some seniors, but didn't they win 13 games last year?
I think so. I don't remember exactly the number, but I know it's something like that.
Yeah. So very interesting with last week there. And I tell you what, it's this would be the time of the program that we would do our rankings. Just off the top of your head, Bob, I'll start with you. Who are some of the teams, for you? Obviously, you're much more centric to Philadelphia and District 1 or whatever. Who are some of the teams that you're really keeping your eye on this season?
Sure, and might be my swan song here. I might have to scoot
Sure,
over
no
to
worries.
bedtime, but gosh, the teams that I'm interested in or that have caught my eye, I really think about those 4 in District 12. Not to go back to the well there, but Imhotep, St. Joe's Prep, Roman Catholic, LaSalle. I'll throw Malvern Prep in there as well. Certainly not a PIAA school, but that talent is just unbelievable. Not I guess not a premonition or anything, but I feel like if I had to rank my top 5A/6A schools, it might be some order of those schools. I mean, North Allegheny's terrific, of course. I'm forgetting someone certainly. CB South again had a great year
Yeah,
last year,
CB
but
Sal. Mm-hmm.
yeah. But I feel as if those schools are a class above right now. I'll say the other thing is I find the Harrisburg situation incredibly interesting. They would come out of the western half of the bracket. I still think that they have every ability to do that with Mickens and Sheffy and Ewell out of the backfield. That's a 3-headed monster, any of which could rush for 1,000, 1,500 yards, or maybe all of them will. Their question mark in my mind is at quarterback. And if Jayon Lewis is the answer, that's a program that could turn around a 45-7 drubbing in week number 1. And I think they ran partially into the wrong opponent at the wrong time into what would be a terrific story for Cal Everett, having to pivot on a dime, went to a sophomore quarterback after Lee was ruled ineligible. That, at least to this point, hasn't worked. Not to say that young man couldn't come back and take the job. For the time being, Jayon Lewis has come in, not a quarterback by trade, certainly, but is getting it done in the biggest rivalry game in 10 years. That's a program that's super interesting to me.
Good stuff. Dave, I mean, any kind of surprise teams or some stories you're starting to see develop already?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk a little bit about records and milestones from past week. Another one out of District 4, Mount Carmel getting their 900th win last week. They're the first Pennsylvania school to reach that.
Wow.
Obviously Jim Roth, with number 500. Riverside's quarterback, he went over 4,000 career yards passing. That's a great milestone. CB East, their running back, Price, 6 total touchdowns, which is a school record there. So, in Northwestern Lehigh, that's one of the
Yeah.
teams that, hey, last year, it's been a while since District 11 has made it to the state finals. They were runner up last year. They lost 5 seniors, 5 really good seniors, but they're still a very good program, a team that, they expect to try to make another run. And last week I was at the game, and Eli Zimmerman, I mean, he had 4 touchdowns the first half, scored 3 different ways. First play of his game was a punt return for a touchdown. And he tied 2 records, actually tied his coach with 2 records: most career punt returns for touchdowns with 3, most career interceptions with 14. So that's incredible
Wow.
stats by that young man.
Yeah, and our buddy Bob had to take off. For
Mhm.
me, I'll tell you what, I think one of the interesting stories for the year, I think, is going to be 4A here in the
Mhm.
Eastern half. I mean,
Yeah.
there are really just superior programs. I mean, Jersey Shore, um, Pope John Paul II, Twin Valley, and Wyomissing joins the party because they've moved up from 3A to 4A. That's going to be pretty interesting. Um, and in 5A, Westchester, Ruston, I think it's a lot of the usual suspects, but Roman Catholic, really going to be tough. I think a team in 6A that people really better take notice with. And I mean, they had a lot last year and coming back, but Manheim Township, nobody's talking about them really, in the grand scheme of things here in 6A in the eastern side. But I'll tell you what, they're going to be an enormously tough out. Bob touched on Central Buck South. Um,
Mhm.
Downingtown West is going to be tough again. 3A, Goretti is one that you're going to have to keep an eye on as well. So just some of the teams that, that I'm and Dave are keeping our eye out for as we move through here. And Dave, let's take a look at some games that, we like here in our look ahead. Games of note, week 2. You see that all right, huh?
I can.
Wow, how about that? Amazing technology. But yeah, a couple teams, quite honestly, Strathaven and Ridley. Down there, District 1, they're gonna go toe to toe there. I mean, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be, I think, a great game. Strathaven has 2 very good running backs.
They
I
do.
kind of give them the slight edge. We're actually covering this game. But hey, battle 2-0 teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a very interesting, matchup that Chester and Imhotep are getting together. Now, I don't recall that they've played in the regular season previously.
Yeah, I don't remember they have. I know Joe is covering this game Saturday. I think this is an interesting game. Obviously, to me, I give Emotep an edge in this game, but this is a game I think for Chester to really show, how talented that team is. And I think, for the most, this game could be close early, but Emotep is a tough
Oh, they're
team,
just way too much talent. But
way too much talent.
yeah, and I believe they're playing I think they're at or no, it's they're at Imhotep, so I'm not entirely sure where they were playing. But a game I think that you're covering, Wilson and Nazareth, very interesting. One of the things that's happening is, I touched on the fact that the Mid-Penn Conference now has 9 league games. And that has forced some of the teams here in District 3 to do is they had to look elsewhere for their non-league opponents. Look at all the non-league games between District 11 and District 3 this year. That's kind of the result of the fact that, that's where District 3 had to go to play their non-league games there. And I like them. And this is a great matchup, Wilson and Nazareth.
Yeah, it is. It's a battle of 2-0 teams. Nazareth, they open up against District 2 Hazelton. Then last week they played 5A Whitehall, and now they're playing undefeated Wilson out of District 3. But, it comes down to this. Nazareth, they have their all-state candidate quarterback, junior Peyton Falzone, 6'5", could throw the ball, could run the ball. He's thrown, I think, for over almost 400 yards passing so far, and he's rushed. He's leading the team in rushing with almost 200 yards with 4 touchdowns. Another guy to keep on is the 4-star running back, Marquise Wimberley. He's a junior. It's the big three, and then you have Lafayette wide receiver Caleb Newson, along with Austin Boyce, are their 2 top receivers. It's going to be a fun game. I think it could be back and forth. This will be a good measurement for both programs Friday night in Nazareth.
Yeah, and I like the fact too that they're real. I don't recall Wilson ever playing a District 11 non-league game. I mean, they're usually, it's usually District 3 or down in District 1. So very interesting. And we touched on Notre Dame Green Pond. They're at North Schuylkill. Typically a pretty solid defensive club. So what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, this is the annual Notre Dame North Schuylkill. I think the last probably 5 years, North Schuylkill probably has the edge in this matchup. But again, different year, different players. I think Phil has this offense clicking at mid-season form already, and it's going to come down to, does North Schuylkill have the defense to try to slow down Notre Dame? Because honestly, it could be like week 1 with Garden Spot, where it was a basketball score. I mean, Notre Dame, they're just going to try to outscore you.
Right. And new year, but same old Troy. They're off to another good start.
They are.
They're playing South Williamsport. Troy looks to be one that looks like they're on the way to another good season.
Yeah, and they just got done playing down in Delaware. I think it was against Dover, and they come away with I think an 8-3 win in that game. And impressive. I think they had to make a defensive stop in the end zone to preserve that win. But they went down there to the that little tournament down there,
Yeah.
and they come away with an impressive win coming back, to this game. So, but yeah, Troy, I'll tell you what, they're opening people's eyes. They gave Southern Columbia last year in districts all they could handle in that torrential downpour rain in the mud. And I think, their goal is to get that rematch with Southern Columbia down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Teams coming off a couple of good wins. Wyoming area just beat Dallas. Western Wayne just beat Lackawanna Trail. They're facing off in a really early kind of benchmark game on, who's going to impose their will on their opponent.
Yeah, I mean, both teams 2-0, both with impressive wins last week. Western Wayne, they're led by their running back, Josh Vinton. He's a guy last week, I think he rushed for almost 200 yards in their win. And like he said, Wyoming area, an impressive win last week. This one's going to be a good one.
Cedar Cliff, who is now in the Commonwealth Conference, of the Mid-Penn, coming off a win over Central Dauphin, is at CD East off to a good 2-0 start. I tell you what, really interesting matchups early on, and this is a league game, and for both their second league game for each one. But this is going to be a real interesting game to determine or how the pecking order is going to fall in the Commonwealth, right?
Yeah, I agree. And another early test for both programs. Both are 2-0, and this will be a fun game to watch.
And another fun game to watch, Westchester Ruston, a 5A team, going into Pope John Paul II, a 4A team, both undefeated, testing themselves out here. The one thing about Ruston, they don't back down from anybody. This is a
No.
5A team that plays, predominantly 6A opponents, with the exception of Pope John Paul II, who is the same thing as them. They take on all comers, and this is going to be a very interesting game.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Penn Live's rankings that just came out today, Ruston, they're ranked fourth in 5A, and Pope John Paul's ranked third, or yeah, in 4A, and Ruston in 5A. This is a great matchup. Ruston could really run the ball. Pope John Paul, they could throw it, they could run it. We're covering this game. This is going to be another primetime game to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it sure is. And, got a lot of great coverage so far from Eastern PA football. God, it's great to, to see the guys all over the place. Just about every single game of consequence. You've got somebody, at that, Dave. I mean, talk a little bit about, the website and, typically how many guys we got covering games each week. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we're covering, between, I'd say, 10, 12 games a week. We get some of the league games, but in the end, in regular season, you try to get as many teams as you can, and that's the goal. Because once playoffs come, you're probably going to cover some programs more than once. So to me, I think it's important to try to cover as many programs as we can all through, Eastern PA, from Philly to Scranton to Harrisburg.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, it's been was a really good show this
It
week.
was.
A lot of fun having Bob. We want to thank Brett Gordon from LaSalle College High School, new head coach there. And next week we add our rankings. We will be
Yeah.
adding the rankings. Dave and myself and Bob will be providing our 1 through 5 of basically the 3 categories: 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, and 5A, 6A. So a little bit more discussion, and hopefully we can have our friends with the live chat come at us too. We kind of like that as well. So, Dave, any parting thoughts?
No, just I'm glad we're back. Unfortunately, we couldn't start the show last week with the death of my father-in-law, and but I'm so glad to be back on the show. And listen, we're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna try to get fans involved in this, and like we said, we're gonna start off with maybe like the best atmosphere,
Yeah,
and we'll see what we get out of it, and we'll have some surprises along the way.
I'm sure we will have some surprises along the way, as we always do. So for Bob Long, Dave Mika, my name's Bruce Badgley. Listen, thanks for joining us here on EasternPAFootball.com's Fresh Set of Downs. We'll be back next Tuesday night at 7:30. So until then,